Welcome to a special episode of Coffee in the Barn, where we discuss exclusive content featuring our captivating guest speakers. Today, prepare to be enthralled as we dive deep into the minds and hearts of our extraordinary guests. From pioneer figures in the world of agriculture to trailblazers pushing the boundaries of innovation, each speaker brings a unique perspective and a wealth of insight to share. So grab your coffee and settle in to learn more about our incredible guests.
Well, we are having a special guest on Coffee in the Barn today to celebrate the working moms of the agriculture industry. And we have Kaylee, Kathy McDonald with Zimpro on. And welcome, Kaylee, to the call. And we're glad to have you. And we really wanted to start out with this conversation and have the audience get an exclusive behind the scenes of who is Kaylee and what makes you tick and things like that. We want to hear your story.
Yeah, well, first off, thanks Casey and Morgan for having me on the show. Super excited to tell my story, but super excited to share about an upcoming event that we've put together and have been working on for quite some time. So, little background about myself. So from Eastern Iowa, probably typical Midwest girl, grew up on a crop and livestock farm. My dad has had finishing barns since 1995. So from the beginning, grew up there, typical, I would say my passion and roots and foundation for the swine industry really stemmed from our parents getting us so involved at such a young age. I remember, well, to back up a little bit, just the Kepi name in general, Roy Kepi started the pork checkoff. So I think it's just kind of in our blood and our roots a little bit to be passionate about the swine industry. And our parents from a young age had us involved with Scott County pork producers. I don't know if you guys remember, but back in the day, going to the grocery store and the pork producers were handing out samples every Saturday and Sunday at the grocery stores or doing ag in the classroom. They kept us very involved, ran for Scott County Pork Queen, Iowa Pork Queen, went to Pork Congress, went to World Pork Expo at a young age and gathered all the goodies we could. So I really think my passion has stemmed from those roots for sure. And then got involved in 4-H and FFA and showing livestock. And from there went on to Blackhawk East there in Kewanee, Illinois, and judged livestock and got to meet a whole different dynamic network of people there and started networking and really grew my base or realm, if you will. And folks like Dan Hogue and Lee Denzer and Brian Arnold are still mentors to me to this day, but really kind of broadened my horizons to what else was out there. Then transferred to Iowa State University, where I got a degree in animal science. Love Ames, Iowa. Loved Iowa State University, and the professors and the people I met there are just priceless. Right out of college, from 2011 to 2019, I worked for ADM, wore a lot of different hats, great company, did a lot of different things, met a lot of different people. And then did a short stint at Vitagro, and now I'm at Zimpro.
And what is your role today with Zimpro?
So I am a swine account manager. We don't really have territories, if you will, but I would say I focus really mainly out east with Dr. Zach Rambo.
And for the audience who may not know what an account manager is, what does that mean? Like, what's your life like or your week like? What's a day job? Obviously, we have you at home, but that's not normal.
Right. So I would say day to day looks different, right? In a sales role, you're constantly calling on accounts, calling on integrators, calling on industry partners, talking internally with your team, strategizing. I would say every week looks different for a salesperson, but what I enjoy most is connecting with different people and working within the industry and just hearing everyone's different stories. But yeah, really focus on calling on large integrators, feed companies, and working in the swine space that way.
And I'm going to ask you to be a little vulnerable here because I think you have a really great story about your family, and we kind of bonded a little bit over our pregnancy difficulties. And
Sure.
can you kind of talk about that for maybe the mothers listening that may need to feel like they're not alone, and walk us through that and how that impacted you and your career and different things beyond just, we love pigs, but
Yep.
kind of go into that, because I think our story and being able to tell that is very powerful for people who are experiencing similar, I'm going to call it traumatic experiences.
Yep.
Or shattered dreams of motherhood experiences. Yeah. And I think having that out in the space is important. So I'm going to ask you to be vulnerable with our audience and kind of walk us through your story on being a mom.
Yeah, sure. I would love to, and I'll try not to get kind of teary-eyed thinking about it, because I'm grateful to be sitting here and having a conversation with you and Morgan today. But, everyone has this vision of what their life is going to look like, right? They have this vision of, I'm going to get married, have a successful career, have the kids, and everything's going to work out just fine. And, I got married later in life, I would say, and we had discussed kids. So waited about a year and a half after getting married. God knew I needed to be a stepmom first. So my husband has 2 older girls. So we have currently 16, 14, and a 2.5-year-old. And at 10 weeks pregnant, thank God I knew I was pregnant, but at 10 weeks, my husband was traveling for work. We both travel for work, and I was thankfully home. I didn't feel good. And I just chalked it up to being pregnant. I was short of breath. I felt like I was just tired all the time, right? Those are first trimester type things. Like, you Google it and it says, yeah, you're going to be short of breath. You're going to be tired. You're, all these things. So I didn't think anything of it. Had lunch with a friend in Muncie, Indiana. So thankfully I was close to a hospital. I stood up and I had shortness of breath. So I called the hospital and they said, why don't you come in? We'll check you out. If you know you're pregnant, let's definitely check you out. Thank God I just had that gut feeling. As a mom, you just kind of have gut feelings, right? Of probably just need to check this out. Otherwise, any other time, if I wasn't pregnant, I think I would have just ignored it. I drove myself to the hospital. The ER was about 5 miles away. Thank God. Got to the parking lot and they had to come out and get me in a wheelchair because I couldn't make it to the ER door. And I just literally couldn't catch my breath. They did an EKG. The waiting room was completely full in the ER, and they said it could be up to 2 hours. I don't know if just a higher power, God was looking out for me that day, but it cleared out pretty quick. And they got me in within 30 minutes, did a CT scan, and my lungs lit up like a Christmas tree, they said. And I had PEs, also known as like blood clots, that made it to my lungs. So they called my husband, who was in West Texas, so in a car, long ways away. And they said, we have your wife and she's going to have emergency surgery. So they don't put you to sleep for that surgery. So the whole time I just kept praying the entire time that the baby was going to be okay and I was going to be okay. And they did surgery to remove as many clots from my lungs as possible. And I'll be honest, I didn't know that that was something that could arise during pregnancy. I hadn't looked into it that far, that PEs, blood clots, what to look for. I didn't know any of those signs. So I'd encourage anybody, not to scare anybody, but just to be aware. But yeah, made it out of the hospital, was put on Lovenox injections for, I think I counted, and I did over 400 injections, 2 injections a day, but over 400 of them during the course of pregnancy. And I ended up having 39.5-hour labor with little Marka Marie, but she's here. She's healthy. Outside of that, I didn't have a C-section or anything else, just had a pretty decent pregnancy outside the hours of labor. But yeah, thankful to be here. The doctor sat me down afterwards and said, somebody was looking out for you, because most of the time, this is not how people are found with PEs. So thankful every single day. And it really puts things into perspective from a life standpoint when you're out and about and, you know, you get frustrated on some work days or you get irritated with some people or just certain challenges arise. You kind of step back and really put things into perspective of what's life about. And, you know, you kind of start putting faith and family first in a lot of situations. So yeah, that's my story. And I would sit here and tell everyone, you know the signs of a blood clot, whether you think you're apt to have them or not. I never would have thought in a million years that would have been my pregnancy story. But I'm thankful to be here to tell it.
It's amazing. What are some of the signs for somebody that's maybe thinking about getting pregnant or early pregnancy with this?
Yeah. So I didn't have a lot of the normal typical blood clot signs besides shortness of breath or just really tired or fatigued. But they usually start in your leg as a DVT. So you'll really have like a hot spot in your calf or a Charlie horse that won't go away. You know, like a Charlie horse after time just kind of goes away. This won't, or kind of bruise-like symptoms, or it could feel like a pulled muscle in your leg. More than half the time it starts in your left leg versus your right leg. And those can be knocked loose and travel up to your lungs.
So that's really cool. I mean, it's kind of scary because blood clots, well, I didn't have major surgery. I didn't have these things. And I've known several of my family members have blood clots and different things. But being pregnant, and that to me is kind of scary. But can I laugh a little bit? Just a little? Make it fun, funny?
Yeah.
I bet it was the pig god saying, she gave us all these shots, and now it's her turn to get shots, because that's kind of what I feel like sometimes, like 400 shots. I'm like, it must have been some angry pigs up there wreaking havoc on you to say, hey, we're going to make her go through this so she can feel what it's like to get 400 needles stabbed into her.
Well, I need to laugh or to jump on top of that, basically. So they were like, your husband can give you shots if you don't feel comfortable doing that. And I was like, do you know how many pigs I've injected over the years? I think this is going to be no problem. Plus, I'd rather just do it myself. Maybe it's a control factor, but yeah, they're like, well, you can come in and they can give you shots twice a day, or you can do it yourself or your husband or somebody else can inject you every day. And yeah, when you're a livestock person, you just handle it.
So were the injections supposed to help, like, as a blood thinner?
Yep. So they thin your blood. Yep. And then I did those 6 months postpartum, kind of transitioned to a known blood thinner like Eliquis.
Well, and you just got some really good news this last month. 2.5 years. It didn't stop after the baby. So.
No. Super, super thankful. And I will say that it's valuable to get a second opinion on things, just like in life or just like in our industry. Sometimes, it comes different perspective, different lookout. So I've gone to 2 hematologists now, and one said, I just don't feel really comfortable after everything that you've been through to pull you off a blood thinner. And the other one was, again, maybe just a hidden blessing, but he did his residency in what they were focused on with me, which was a protein S deficiency or a blood clotting disorder, and which is very rare. And I went to him, and he was local, and he said, you know what? I feel really comfortable pulling you off blood thinners. You're doing all the right things. All your tests came back great. And so 2.5 years of fighting to find a new hematologist that would listen, dig into my story. It was just kind of an uphill battle or fight, if you will. And I'm glad I looked into it. So, yep.
Yeah. And I think that's good advice for anybody, children or not, is you have to be your own advocate. And then if you have children, Marca's beautiful and healthy. Arthur was not born with that. And, I still have to be an advocate for my child to get the resources he needs in the school system. So it never changes. But if you don't advocate for yourself or your loved ones, nobody's going to help you.
Absolutely. I would second that all day long. Absolutely.
Mama bear power.
Yeah. And you just have those gut feelings sometimes. And I know it sounds like cheesy, if you will. And I know people say it all the time, but it's like, listen to your gut. It is telling you something is off, something's wrong. Do what you got to do.
And I wonder if you didn't happen to be pregnant, would this have, maybe this would have came about in a whole different scenario.
Yeah, I hate to say it, and I said it before. If I wasn't pregnant, I don't know if I would have gone to the hospital. So I don't know if I would have been here speaking to you guys.
Well, we're glad to have you, and your story is very powerful for the people who need to hear it today. Because yes, advocate for yourself, trust your gut, pray,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
and take care of yourself. I've learned the hard way. Kaylee was smart enough to listen. I wasn't. But that is a lot about Kaylee and her story, which to me is very powerful listening to, and the part of the Coffee in the Barn and part of our exclusive content. And so thank you for sharing your story with us.
Yes, thank you for allowing me to do so.